In a world where Maitland McDonough, First Lady of Horror, speaks, and you have a front row seat. This is Maitland on movies, horror, double feature. A long walk, lovely landscape. What could possibly go wrong? So, what did you see this time?
This time I got to see The Long Walk, which is based on a novel by Stephen King, and I think is not what all fans of Stephen King's work would be expecting.
Well, it wasn't originally under his name, right?
No, it was not. This is one of the novels that he wrote when he was very young under a pseudonym.
Bachman.
It
Yep.
specifically, it's a Bachman book, yeah. And it is something. Again, I think obviously it's not later Stephen King. It's early, and it is not a horror movie per se, although it is quite horrifying. It's actually a dystopian future movie. And
from the little bit I understand, it's kind of like if J. Michael Straczynski wrote Hunger Games. It's like a lot of talking and a lot of people getting killed off gradually.
It is. And yes, Hunger Games is very much the movie that you pretty much inevitably have to compare it to, because it's a movie in which, among other things, excuse me, it's a movie in which the young people of America are paying for something that they didn't do, basically. It's a spectacle that's taking place in an authoritarian America where every year, every state has to be taught a lesson, essentially, by sending a young man to do the long walk. Okay, it's a hundreds of mile walk. And the young man who is still standing at the end of it is the one whose state is going to get extra government compensation, rations, things that people need because everybody is in a bad place. So it's basically a way of keeping people under control because, that's what authoritarian governments do. They figure out ways to keep people from rebelling.
And produce the illusion that there's a way out, at least for somebody.
Exactly, for somebody. Every year for somebody, there is a way out. So yeah, it's extremely dystopian. But what's interesting is that in most dystopian future novels, you see a lot of the dystopia. Here you don't. You know it exists because if it didn't exist, this long walk wouldn't exist. This is not a thing that countries that are functioning rationally and with relative opportunity for all its citizens. This is a thing that reeks of desperation. The rules are that these are young men from the age of, I believe it's 12 to 18. So they're young, but the youngest ones are very young and the oldest ones are men. So there's already an unfairness built in there. The guys who are going to walk are chosen by a lottery. So there's no people sitting down and saying, okay, well, we're at least limiting this to, we're going to send all 18-year-olds or 17 and 18-year-olds who are nearly grown men. We're not going to send kids into this thing. That's not there. This lottery is supposed to be impartial. And in fact, it's designed in a way that's just going to hurt every year a certain number of states more than it hurts other states. So there's a cruelty that's just built into it. Yep. One that if the powers that be wanted to eliminate, could eliminate, but they don't. So it's just an additional form of terrorization of the masses to keep them from rising up. Because if this is how bad it is when they're doing what they're told, how bad is it going to be if they actually rebel?
Yeah.
And also,
it's that mode of what's the quote I like? What can one person do? Said 7 billion people.
Yeah.
As long as you keep people unable to organize, you can perform horrific and terrible things. And
Absolutely.
there's no parallels in the modern world at all, of course. But,
oh, of course, no.
But as you were saying, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's the policy of keep people terrified. And most of them, the overwhelming majority of them, will take the don't make waves way of getting through. They'll just keep their heads down, do what they're supposed to do, and hope for the best, which of course they're never going to get, because that attitude is just, it's exactly what's keeping them under the yoke. So it's a very, very pessimistic movie.
Now, one of the things I kind of like about this conversation is that the last episode we recorded, we talked about very closed spaces. It takes place in basically one location. There's layers and layers of claustrophobia built into the mechanism. And here, it's a lovely walk outside, except 99 of you aren't making it.
Yeah, it's it's a beautiful outdoor, what looks like the Midwest. It's never very specific about where it is, but it looks like the Midwest. And yeah, it's a long march. And long marches, yeah, people die. And again, the disparity between the 12-year-olds walking and the 18-year-olds walking, just that alone says, and this isn't fair.
Yep.
If there's any fairness to it, you would make it 17 and 18-year-olds, okay? Same age.
Or maybe not do it at all. Yes.
Or maybe not do it at all, but that is clearly not a given in this scenario. We're definitely going to do it.
Yeah, so, cruelty is the point.
Cruelty is the point. And one of the things that I think is really well done in it is that they're walking along what are basically, it looks like the Midwest, okay? The not great, beautiful Midwest, but the part that's very flat and a lot of not particularly verdant surroundings. I mean, there are patches of it, yes, but there's a lot of scrubby, not great looking ground to be covered. And it's not desolate. We're not in the Gobi Desert, but it's not particularly beautiful. And the grimness of it just increases steadily over the course of the film, obviously partly because people start to drop. You also can't stop, ever. You can't stop to relieve yourself. You've got to do that while you're walking, which is about half the time, okay, easier for men than it would be if the long walk were women. The other half the time, no, it's not so easy, except perhaps that they're also not eating. So that's helping. They do have water, not a great deal of it, but enough so that everybody doesn't die in the first few days.
And this is like a 15-minute mile continuously type situation.
It is 3 miles an hour continuously for hundreds of miles. Okay, it's a nightmare. And it's obvious from the beginning that the point of it is cruelty. This is how totalitarian states work. You use cruelty to show people that it's much better that you just knuckle under. Because however much you may not like it, we could make that so much worse for you.
And this is coming out soon?
Yes, this is. This is also coming out soon. And again, I should have looked up the release date and did not. But yeah, this was
within the next few weeks.
Yeah, this was not an early preview of this movie. This movie's coming out soon. It is absolutely beautifully photographed. It's gorgeous. Were the march not going through it, the landscape would be really beautiful. But it is. And it has a fantastic performance from Mark Hamill in a role that nobody would ever have expected to see Mark Hamill in. And he nails it. He is just a total prick in a position of power. And that's the worst combination ever, right? Lots of power, and you are a prick at heart. So now you have free reign to be as horrible as you want. And he is. He's really, really good. And
he's very versatile. A lot of people don't realize quite how versatile he is.
No, they don't. They don't. And this is a movie that absolutely shows that, yeah, he can do something other than be those much nicer characters you've seen him play in the past. He can be the face of a brutally oppressive regime.
Yeah, no, my friend Carl Polino's had the opportunity to work with Hamill as a voice actor, which brings me around to things like the fact that he's the choice to play the Joker over and over and over again in animation. And that's part of the range that you get to see with him there. It's nice to actually see him with an on-screen presence where he gets to bring that side of himself.
Yes, and he really does bring it. And it's not a showy performance in any way. It's just the performance of somebody who is, first of all, a dick by nature, and who is in a position of tremendous power, and power where he's immediately seeing the consequences of it. It's not like he's sitting in an office hundreds of miles away and handing out orders that are going to have devastating implications for the people whom they affect. He's right there on a tank.
Yep.
Accompanied by tanks.
Yep.
During the march. And watching all the carnage unfold, watching the people who can't walk anymore shot dead on the road, watching the people who are able to walk staggering on, watching the people who are willing to support the people around them, and the people who are saying, oh, fuck no, I'm in this for myself. I'm going to make it to the end.
Well, it does have the Hunger Games problem of no matter how empathetic you want to be, exactly one person is getting out.
Yes, exactly. One person is getting out. So, yeah, it is. It's a grueling film about a grueling situation. And it's certainly, like, it's not a date movie. Do not go on don't go for a date and see The Long Walk, because it's not going to work out in any way that you want it to work out, unless you and your date have already agreed that you love this kind of thing, in which case fine. But yeah, first date movie, no, absolutely not.
And I'm going to make the wild guess there are virtually no female characters.
There are virtually no female characters. There are none. I don't think there's one who has a speaking role. You do see, in some cases, women by the side of the road watching the march go by. And you know that at least a couple of them are mothers of the young men who are in that march. And if they're not, they are probably mothers, period. They have kids. Maybe they have kids who are the same age as the kids in the march. And I say kids, they are older teenagers, but still, those are kids from, I think, our point of view, right?
Yes.
And obviously that's why they're chosen in one part to wound their parents so that their parents will not make any trouble. And in another part, because there's at least a chance that some of them will make more of this march rather than less. They're not all going to die in the first 2 days.
Yep.
Because they're young, and no matter how much they may not be athletes, or they may not be farm workers, or they may not be something that would build your physique up, they're still young and they've got youth on their side. Except that in this case, having youth on your side is the worst possible thing in the world. It just means you're going to last that much longer before it all finally ends. So dystopian is the word, obviously, that comes to mind here. And yes, this is a dystopian future movie. It's also, however, a dystopian future movie that gives a lot of young actors an opportunity to shine, because there are 50 young men in this movie. And yeah, some of them are at the back of the line and you don't see much of them. But even given that there are a few characters who stand out and whom you're watching more than others, you see a lot of young male actors having the chance to be in a very big movie and to get screen time. So that's actually a really good thing about this movie. It's not a good thing when you're just going to the movies to watch a story, but it's actually nice to see that many actors in that age group employed in a movie that is getting a big release.
Let's get the rough question that you just hit on right there. Would you have seen this in a movie theater? Would you have paid a ticket to watch this?
No, probably not. First and foremost, because I'm not a huge Stephen King fan.
But so who is the audience then? Who's the people they're looking for?
I think that's a really good question. People who have read the book, And I have to assume that that is a fairly significant number of people because, yes, it's a Stephen King novel. So if you put Stephen King's name on it, that's a big boost.
Yeah.
But no, it's not a Stephen King novel that is the kind of Stephen King novel that most people read. It's just not. It's not The Shining. It's not all kinds of Stephen King books that are horror thrillers, often with younger characters in them, but not always. I mean, he's a big name.
It's kind of boiled down because we take all the trappings off the sides of it and bring it down to the idea of here's a group of people, some of them are going to die, which is the core of a lot of horror.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, they've removed all the window dressing from that. They've removed all the scenery from that. They've removed all the interaction from that, except for this one context.
Right. Yeah, they've removed all the backstory. You really don't know much about who these young men are. Okay, as they talk to each other, you get a little bit, in some cases, of where they're from, what kind of lives they've had so far, but they really are almost anonymous players in this giant game that they didn't ask to be in. That they were essentially they were conscripted.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they were all thrown into the army to go on a mission that everybody knows almost everybody's going to die on, except that now we know literally everybody but one are going to die somewhere along the way.
Which also reminds us things like Squid Games also.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. It's, in its way, although it has an enormous cast and lots of landscape, a really minimalist movie.
Yeah.
You learn a little bit about some of these boys' backgrounds because they talk to each other.
Mm-hmm.
But they also don't have a lot of time to talk, partly because, yes, they are on a forced march.
Yeah.
And they're young enough that they can take it for longer than I could, for sure. Or I'm sure you could. I mean, how far could we march with no food?
I'm pretty asthmatic, actually.
Well, so am I. So, and if I didn't have my inhaler with me, I'd be out, in the first 8 hours. But yeah, it's one of those movies that I'm actually fascinated that it got made. Obviously, it got made on the author's name, but I can't imagine what meeting people sat in discussing who do I think wants to see this movie. The obvious answer is Stephen King fans, but The Long Walk is not one of the.
I will make the argument that things like Squid Games probably gave them some encouragement, much more than Hunger Games, because Hunger Games has all these other settings and has a lot of context to it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is we said very stripped down, but Squid Games at some level is also very stripped down, and it did find an audience, and I would have to guess that was part of the conversation.
It probably was. It was probably the first argument that somebody brought up in favor.
Yeah, because I was looking at the press for this when you first mentioned it, and it was like, this is a hard sell. That this is not going to be the kind of thing that, like you said, it's not a date movie.
Oh no.
I was on Nick Leschy's podcast recently, and we were talking about The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And he pointed out that a lot of its popularity came from the fact, not the book itself, but the stage play that was derived from it. And the first thing that the guy who commissioned the stage play did was he didn't commission Robert Louis Stevenson to write it. And he added as many female characters as he could, and he added a love interest, and he added all this other context to make it work. So, brilliant idea that Stevenson had not been tried before, but a lot of the credit for its popularity was adding in all these other things. So I'm kind of curious to see how this movie does, because it's more like the original piece. It doesn't have that extra layering and backstory. And yeah, I'm very curious to see if this becomes iconic because of how different it is, or it just becomes a thing that was like a noble experiment.
Yeah, I think that's a very good way of summing up what the issues with this movie could be. I'm thinking it'll do a good week. Oh, it'll do a good first weekend. It's Stephen King.
Yep.
You know, his name is going to bring in a certain number of people, but I'm wondering whether word of mouth might be an issue. Might be people saying, I didn't read the book, and this is not what I expect when I go to see a Stephen King movie. I don't expect to see a forced march ordeal in which almost everybody dies. And that is not a spoiler, because that's the given of the
Yeah,
march.
it's the title. It's The Long Walk. Yes.
Yeah, it's yes, walk or die. And most of them are going to. And the austerity of the way it's made is very impressive.
Oh, yeah.
There are no flashbacks to people's lives before, which would be a natural way, I think, for a lot of filmmakers to want to take it, so that you see more of what they were like before they're here. But no, there's none of that. That's just, here they are, and they're just a sea of young men's faces, 50 young men's faces.
See, the other thing you're making me think about now is Steven Spielberg's Duel, if you've ever seen that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So for our audience, Duel basically is the guy cuts off a truck driver, and that turns into a life or death match in which we don't really get much backstory on anybody, and we are really just in the moment. And Spielberg did it on a shoestring budget. And it's interesting, he did it before he was a name. It was one of the things that made him into a name. And seeing this is kind of the reverse. This is being done on a bigger budget, on a bigger scale, on a bigger everything. But exactly to Maitland's point, this is the kind of thing that's ideal for a new filmmaker who has a limited budget and a limited opportunity and has to work within really deep financial constraints. But that's not the movie we're going to see here. We're going to see one that had a budget.
It's one that had a budget. And to be fair, you have to start with 50 young actors whom you've got to pay. You don't have to pay all of them for very long.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, that is the given of this story. But
that should be the advert for the movie right there. Just you saying, we start with 50 actors, but you don't have to pay most of them for very long. That was so good.
Thank you. It's an attrition movie. You just they keep dropping out. And I give kudos to the entire cast. Well, perhaps not to the entire cast, because there are a bunch of people you really don't see much of. You see their heads and their bodies, but you don't get to know them particularly well. So when they drop, it's not such a big issue. I mean, obviously, you recognize that it's human damage, but it's not the same as when you start to pare down the number of actors that you're seeing.
Yeah.
And again, that's a very good kind of scenario for a movie, because you get to start out looking like it's big cast. Wow, but then you get to drop them out really quickly, and it's not artificial feeling, because it is the very nature of the story. You're going to be losing them regularly. So there are a whole bunch of people on the back of the line that, you don't see them.
No, as a writer, I'm a huge fan of putting a very clear clock on certain things and letting the audience have the experience of watching the clock wind down. And 50 down to 1 is very, very much a clock. And to your point, very integrated, because it is the integral backbone of the story.
Yes. It is a very good piece of writing from a very young Stephen King. It's a beautiful, it's almost as though he thought, wow, this could be a really good movie, because there aren't a ton of complications in it. There's a good through line that you're following, but you're going to have a lot of characters that you don't have to spend a lot of time explaining. And I am sure that was not the case. He was very young. He was in college when he wrote the first version.
I think I heard that part of his inspiration was apparently Johnson conscripting people for the Vietnam War, and this whole central conceit of young men being taken out of their homes for a thing, as you started this with, that they didn't choose, that they're paying for.
Yeah, very much so. It is very much a movie of its era, even though it's not set in the era in which it was written. It's reflecting, as many horror and dystopian thriller stories do, they're reflecting the world in which they were written. It's just been placed into a fictional context.
Well, also, I would say that that's kind of an apex thing that makes it a Stephen King story. He's never been afraid of mentioning brand names and other things that he knows may or may not age well that set his pieces in very specific, this is when it was written kind of a sense.
That's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. It absolutely, his details place those stories in a time. But at the same time, in a lot of cases, you could drop those details and move it
You
to
can, but I'm saying, but including them and making something very much of a time is almost tropic for King.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there's a certain author, and I won't mention his name, but everyone will know it if I say, in every one of his stories, pretty much, there's a guy whose intelligence is underestimated, who's the main character. There's a love interest who sees through it, and there's a dog.
And what's the number one rule of dogs?
Go ahead.
Don't kill the dog.
Yes.
People will hate you for it. You can kill all the characters. Don't kill the dog.
Now, the way I've always heard it is the villain has to kick the dog and the hero has to save the cat. But yes.
And I love heroes who save cats, because cats certainly don't reward you the way dogs do. And I say this as a cat lover. I adore cats, but I adore their slightly, you're not better than me attitude. Dogs totally have the you're better than me attitude.
I remember seeing Midnight Express in the theaters as a teenager. And it's a very violent movie set in a Turkish prison.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone in the audience is just going along with it. And there's one point, all the lights go out and they come back up and somebody has killed the cat. The audience went nuts. Mm-hmm. All the brutality against people, they just sat and watched. Somebody killed the cat. The audience was in a complete state of uproar.
And there you go.
Yeah. But I absolutely won't mention Dean Koontz's name in connection to what I said before. At all.
Why would you?
Of course not. Because everyone already knows.
That's right. Everybody who cares knows.
I don't know if it's true or if it's apocryphal, but apparently there's a story. Somebody pointed that out to Koontz and he looked surprised. He hadn't realized how tropic it was to his stories.
Really?
And like I said, it might be apocryphal, but I enjoy the story, so I'd like to think it's true.
There you go. It's such a good story. It should be true.
Yeah. So, everybody, thank you for coming out to listen. And if you go see the movie, we'd love to see something in the comments about it. And thank you again, Maitland. And we will see you next week.
It is always a pleasure.
It is. On behalf of Maitland McDonough and myself, Charles Baruch, we wish you nothing but happy dreams.